Right now, quantum computing stocks are trading where valuations were expected to be 2 or 3 years from now. And this morning, we were trading the data center market, and this is definitely seeing the most growth in the real world usage of AI data centers. But if you want to tune on into the daily live trading session, it's the second link below. We were just trading Bitfarms this morning. But let's take a look at quantum, which can disrupt AI in the future. Let's jump into it. We're going to go over the top quantum stocks that we're watching right now and why we're watching them. There is some more players that are flooding into the market recently. Notably, you got BTQ. We're going to be jumping into this one. You can see they just IPO'd, so there's no history on the stock. They just IPO'd basically back in September. And then you got primarily, we're going to look at IonQ. You do have LAES, which is in the conversation as they've recently started to push back up into levels we saw back in December and into January of 2024 and 2025. And so now we're looking at the overall outlook for quantum. Now, when we look at the different companies, like we could say QBTS, see this level. It's funny because we started covering them back here and we were saying, hey, this is really intense back here in this correction back in January. But look how far it's come. It's since January around as low as $4 a share, surged to $46 a share here in October. And then we've seen it pull back down to about $25 and then recover. And so most of the quantum story has been that they're trading at, many dozens of times their multiple, or many dozens of times what they're expected to be trading at this time, right? So when we're looking at the levels that they're currently moving at, there's a few things we really want to focus on. The first is going to be that when we're looking at the quantum markets, you're going to want to look at some of the filings. We'll look at the financials. You're going to look and see what that looks like. But ultimately, when we're thinking about the quantum market right now, we're really looking at where the markets are moving. We don't have any key levels that we could with certainty say they're going to be at, because right now it's sentiment based. So it's a different analysis than when they were back here close to their actual valuations of what they should be at. But now that we're 2-3 years in the future, maybe even 5 years in the future, you have to evaluate the quantum stocks differently. Now, the market in general is seeing growth. We're seeing more investments in quantum. But here's what we got going with QBTS. And QBTS has seen this surge up to $46 a share. If you go to their site and get an idea of where they're focusing, in the last Qubits conference that we went to in Scottsdale, Arizona, we got to go see them talk about this. We got to meet some of their team, even meet the CEO and network with some great individuals there. There was a focus on their cloud service. So their cloud service is very interesting because when we're looking at QBTS from a financial perspective, most of their revenues that they've had, if any, have come from partnerships with, let's say, Davidson, or let's say, who do they recently ship to? Germany. They ship to Jülich, Germany, and they still haven't had a positive net income. You can see the negative net income, 167 million. They do have the contracts with NASA through their quantum technology, and yet they're having around, on average, if we look at the annual growth here, they're on track to do about $20 to $25 million this year, which is very small amounts with a negative net income of over 100 or 200 million, and their market cap's at 12 billion. Okay, so around, again, 25 million in revenue, very small amounts. But outside of that, where do they get the most momentum in the future? Well, it's not going to be one-to-one, as many would think. It's probably going to be not the business to business as much as it is going to be the one-to-many. And so that's where they recently launched their quantum cloud. Okay, so their cloud service, it's called the Leap Quantum Cloud Service, providing real-time access to the world's largest quantum computers and powerful hybrid solvers, while offering production-grade accessibility, reliability, and security. And so if we look at the cloud service, okay, it's called Leap here. Um, and you can access the technology. It's been made easy for development, and you can develop it into your app. Okay, so as this is key for a few reasons, because you got the development in the cloud, meaning they're going to most likely be accessible. How many people are going to buy a quantum computer? Um, in fact, if they own the infrastructure and allow people to access it through the cloud, that might actually be more effective than, for example, shipping the quantum computers out for now. And so as they're offering this comprehensive end-to-end platform here, kind of get the demo, see what they got going. Fastest path to quantum computing, no PhD required, they say. You can support up to 2 million variables and constraints. They got hundreds of practical applications and real-time answers. And when we're looking at there's basically no big downtimes. They're saying very quick and easy usage. This is really where I think they're going to see the most growth. You can see Dwave GitHub, access the suite of Ocean tools on Dwave GitHub repository for solving complex problems with quantum computers. And so as someone that owns an AI company myself, and we could search up, let's say our next stock we'll be getting into, which is Rigetti, and we'll get the analysis running. Let's see if it's gonna. I got my cap lock on Rigetti. There we go. So it's loading it up. This is an AI app that I've created, and I can tell you we use right now either OpenAI, Grok, Claude, or Gemini, and these models are amazing, right? We use them all the time. And while AI is the forefront right now, you're seeing a tremendous growth opportunity because these tools are saving us hours of time. They're looking through, the financials, are looking through the technical analysis, all that, and then getting us projections here for the stock. One of the things to consider is that we're adding Dwave, so being able to integrate with Dwave. And so we're actually working on communicating with Dwave through the cloud, and IonQ and Rigetti as well. And so I could tell you, I'm going to have some more firsthand experience. I know we go to the conferences, we've been investing in it, we've been studying it, but we're also going to be integrating it into our own platform to get some quantum analysis. So I really look forward to that in the near term. So with QBTS, we're looking at the financials. They're just so far away. They have some cash and some total assets that are up to almost $1 billion. Current market cap at 12 billion with no revenue. It's just, again, it's like you're looking at high risk, but probably in the long term going to see growth. Now, it's almost dire to look at the outlook here when this is kind of what we've seen. They've used higher highs. They've used the previous resistances as a support. You can see that here, previous resistance as a support, previous resistance as a support. Here's a previous resistance as a support. And overall, there's this hyper bull trend that you could see develop where they were trending upward quite consistently through 2024 from about $3 a share up to about $20 a share, consolidating back down to 15, and then using that $18, $20 resistance as a support 2 times now and continuing up. The very conservative outlook would be a sell down, kind of back down into this gradual, keep things more healthy, and a sell down back into $15 to $17, somewhere down here. But obviously, the outlook is that investors are so bullish that we're seeing it just continue up here, despite valuations being kind of concerning, right? Very concerning. And so as a long-term investor, it's fine. I'm actually quite happy with the move. But as a short-term investor, when you're seeing this type of thing, it just means you have to have a lot more paying attention on the risk management. And that's kind of the general consensus on all quantum stocks. But there are individual things that you'd want to know about the companies that can position different quantum stocks to succeed more than others. And I think the main thing with Dwave and why they might be at an advantage is because they have their own cloud system. And so with their own cloud system that I just mentioned, that's something that other companies, they rely on Amazon, they rely on Google to do the cloud, whereas D-Wave is kind of building it out from the ground up, which in the long term most likely will pay dividends for them for their QPUs. Their 99.9% uptime and availabilities there. So D-Wave customers address hundreds of millions of business and research problems since launch in 2018. So you see that there. So again, on the near term, you got that target up to $45. That's really just it. The next stock to watch outside of the quantum computing, quantum annealing, is going to be Rigetti. And we started some analysis here on the AI. We got some analysis pulled up. Most projections from Grok are actually fairly bullish, continuing to stabilize and push up even further in the next 6 months to the next year for Rigetti. Now, if you look at OpenAI, I think OpenAI probably tells a different story. We've seen them a little bit more bearish and actually not projecting them to not hold the levels that they're at right now and continue kind of back down into the ranges we were talking about earlier. But with Rigetti, you got the same kind of thing. Started covering them around $1 a share. But where Rigetti excels is their partnerships with big tech. D-Wave, they go about it kind of on their own, which is fine. They have a partnership with Boeing. They had a partnership with MasterCard, but you haven't seen much develop there. But ultimately, with Rigetti stock, they're kind of going with more of the startup mentality in that they're seeing investments from big tech. So we started covering them around $1 a share, and we've seen this kind of gradual increase. Then you saw them rocket up to $58 recently. Now that they've pulled back down to $40 a share, they're now looking like their momentum is correcting. We're seeing them correct back down. Do they continue the overall uptrend? They are still above this moving average, this green line that oftentimes acts as a support, and they're trying to consolidate here after a big sharp drop recently. Now, what we'd want to see for Rigetti is, as we mentioned, big tech partnerships. They're trading still at this $40 price point, $58 price point. They're still trading much further up than you'd expect. I think most estimates had them at end of year around $7 to $10. They shot up to 58. So they're trading 3-5 years ahead of what was expected. Now, is there anything that drove that financially? No, there's nothing. In fact, they're losing money. We haven't seen them gain money. They've seen increases in their balance sheet, but they haven't seen any notable financial growth indications. All they've seen here is that their technology has been advancing and that they seem to be well positioned to integrate with big tech. We've talked about it before, but their QPU, for example, if you look at the QPU that they have available here, see this QPU down here, and you were to search up the, let's say the Majorana chip, okay? This is the Microsoft Majorana chip. This is one of the most popular chips, right? When we look at the Majorana chip, you see how its shape and size almost looks like the exact size that would fit into the Rigetti quantum computer. We've kind of talked about that a few times. You can kind of see here, if we could pull up the QPU, see if we could pull it up. Here we are. So you can kind of see like the actual size of the QPU. It almost looks as if it would fit perfectly, right? And I think there's a reason for that. It's actually expected that they're going to be integrating Microsoft chips with the quantum computing of Rigetti. Okay, so this is a quantum chip from Microsoft, and they just launched this Majorana 1 after 20 years of research. They say it's more powerful than every other computer, and you can see just how it would fit. Okay, it looks like it'll fit there. So basically how the quantum computer works is you got the dilution refrigerator. Okay, so 5 casings like the white one at the top that envelope the machine and have a super cold vacuum sealed thermal shield. And then you got the signal chains deliver and condition microwave signals to and from the chip. Then you got the temperature stages. So these are like they plunge to 1/100th of a Kelvin, so hundreds of times colder than outer space. And then they continue down mixing chamber. Here, coldest plate known, and it sits the critical hardware, including amplifiers, additional cables, all down to the QPU here. Okay, quantum processing unit. And so that's where I believe they're going to see that Microsoft partnership. They've increased their fidelity to 99.91%. So with Rigetti's developments in quantum computing, they've been partnered with Microsoft, AWS, and NASA, MIT, and others. And that's really interesting because when you look at where they're deployed on AWS, I believe if you search AWS Rigetti, pull them up here, you can see that AWS has an overview here. Integrated quantum computing systems leveraging superconducting qubit technology. And you can see that if you want to tie in with quantum computers here, that even AWS is providing AWS customers access to quantum computing technologies from multiple hardware providers. So they got trapped ion with IonQ, okay, superconducting, and then they got IQERA and IQM, but you see Rigetti here along with IonQ. And so how do you get access? You can go through that. You can dive deeper into the bracket direct here and start to use these quantum computers. And so what's interesting is with Rigetti, they're going all outsourced. They don't have any, if you're on their sites and you're pulled up, they don't have like a cloud on their site or something. You know, they have the Novera, and you can order the hardware. They have careers and the investors. They have what they do, where they're fabricating, and how they're building it out in Berkeley. But ultimately, they don't have that. So I think that's an advantage for Dwave, but it's also interesting because Rigetti's saying we're not going to focus on building out the cloud. Let's just integrate. Let's just integrate with Microsoft and Amazon. I think that's a really good strategy as well. It could be seen as important. Now, they don't have revenue, but they got some cash on hand. They've seen increased positions, massive, 259 to the 110 decreased positions. And BlackRock is a huge holder of this company. Vanguard, huge holder. You see a lot of big companies buying in. Charles Schwab, Goldman Sachs, Citadel, JP Morgan Chase buying in. And the reality is all of this big institutional buying could be positioning for the future, and we see it stabilize. That's like perfect scenario. As a long-term investor, I mean, I'd love to see that. And that's part of the benefit of being a long-term investor is you don't worry about it and you get to reap the benefits kind of when that happens. But on a short-term play, you see it kind of holding above the 200-day moving average. They are still looking bullish, quite bullish, as they've bounced the resistance here, previous resistance level. They bounce and they're looking to continue up. We mentioned that the analysis on OpenAI might have been bearish, but that's not the case. You can see they are still bullish on OpenAI, 10% over the next 6 months. And it's amazing because, you know, it's basically holding sentiment. And so you have nobody can correct this, okay? It's not something to debate. Why this, why that? It's just the fact. The fact is that investors are pricing in this company for 5 years from now. They're looking at this, they're saying this is going to be good 5 years from now. They're buying it now. That's basically what's happening. Does the valuation, when we looked at the financials for RGTI, does it make sense? No, it doesn't. $13 billion market cap, and they lost 40 million last quarter with a balance sheet of total assets of just 636 million and 550 million in equity. But again, their market cap's at 13 billion. No, it doesn't really make sense. But you know, when you look at the technology opportunity and you'd say, well, if you saw Nvidia back when it was in this level, And so that's really I would say the sentiment around quantum is that they're looking at these quantum companies, and a lot of people are looking at them, and we're a long-term investor, so we fairly look at them that way. We've been covering Rigetti since $1 a share from last year, literally around this time last year, we started covering it. And so, yeah, that's how we see it. But it is a risk, and we don't know 100% that, as you could tell, the revenue hasn't caught up. But again, imagine the revenue starts to catch up. They start to see a superior method to GPUs alone, and they start getting used in tandem with GPUs. Start to see more growth in the quantum market, the QPU alongside the GPUs. And what happens is you could see massive revenue spikes, probably seeing them making hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars per quarter. Now it's like, wow, that's literally 100x from what they're doing, or 1000x from what they're doing currently in revenue. How could we anticipate that? And again, it's really based on the science, the technology, the early developments of the quantum, that they're anticipating that it's like that, but it's not for certain. And that's why when we're looking at some of the reasons why you would look at, quantum right now, and you're looking at the levels that we're following, there's only one thing that you need to know about quantum in the current angle. It's like it's a contrarian approach, this quantum market. It's a slightly rebellious approach, and it's a higher risk approach, but it seems to be working out so far, for now. And so if you're not okay with holding it for a long time, I wouldn't enter it with the long-term position. If you're okay holding it for a long time, then definitely feel free to, get in anytime. Doesn't really matter. So when it comes to Rigetti, it's a close one to watch, and we'll be in it, and we'll be watching it here in the near term. But there's also some other quantum companies that have come up, and we got IonQ, and I'd love to jump into IonQ here. But there's another one that we've been talking about a little bit that I don't really know too much about, and I'd like to do a little dive here on the video, which is this recent IPO of BTQ. They went from $4 up to 17 and then sold back down to 8. What is this company BTQ? And why does it sound like BTC? I think it's because they're planning to do quantum computing, or they're already doing quantum computing cybersecurity related to quantum. So if we go BTQ and we open up their sites, and then we could do BTQ stock, we could take a look at their financials here. There's a lot of hype, I know, around the BTQ market. That's what I've seen. So quantum in general has seen more hype than usual, right? But what we're looking at is you can see them start to increase here. BTQ, what's the reasoning? They're currently trading here at, let's take a look at where they're at here. Again, $8.93. Okay. So when we're looking at the company's growth, they haven't seen any growth in their net income. It's been negative. They are turning a very small amount of revenue, just around like 50K to 250K. Okay, so not much. Revenue's down year over year. Net income is slightly up, but net income is negative about $1 million a quarter, $2 million a quarter. They've seen their total assets start to decline a little bit quarter over quarter as well. But they've raised some money recently, and so we can kind of get into it. They're saying accelerating the quantum advantage, and they have a very nice site here. Partnered with IDIQ or IDQ. They're partnered with Radical Semiconductor. Okay. Quantum defense. So they're working on, let's see, secure hardware, quantum secure cryptographic hardware with unmatched efficiency and post-quantum security. They're anticipating for the security around quantum. BTQ is driving the future of post-quantum solutions. All right. And you look at some of their latest news. BTQ added Samsung, active Coact Global Quantum Computing, active ETF. BTQ and ICTK sign a $15 million quantum secure chip development and joint investment agreement to advance global quantum safe hardware. All right, that was just yesterday. Okay. Then the A couple days before that, BTQ partners with Bonsall Labs to achieve industry first NIST standardized post-quantum cryptography signature verification on Solana. Okay, so very interesting. Solana is a blockchain that is very fast. They do like 40,000 transactions per second, so much faster than Ethereum, much faster than other blockchains. And they're also very cheap, like less than a penny per transaction, Solana. But the problem with Solana is they've had some issues around security. They've had times where the network has gone down. They've had issues with keeping the network up, certain vulnerabilities that have caused them to shut down their network temporarily. And there's been some hacks, but primarily on wallet holders, not on the main infrastructure itself. And so, they're just partnered with Solana there. You can see them working with them. Financial networks. This is interesting, right? So quantum computers are going to break Bitcoin. That's one of the things they're talking about. Entanglement and computing. They're talking quantum algorithms here. All right. Quantum secure cryptocurrencies. All these things. So they're looking on securing the blockchain primarily with quantum cybersecurity. Okay. So it's an interesting approach. All right. Now this company kind of came out of nowhere here. And if you look at their investor relations, we can take a look at their approach. They have some development with blockchain companies. They've had some news come out, but primarily we haven't seen them. It's mostly the anticipation of quantum. And when it comes to their products, okay, so you could pick one of their products, quantum secure stablecoin network. Okay. Quantum secure stablecoin infrastructure. Revolutionizing stablecoin security by implementing post-quantum cryptography to create an unbreachable foundation for digital currency transactions, stablecoin operations, and secure financial networks. Key capabilities. Quantum secure stablecoin transactions. Security features, post-quantum cryptographic protocols, end-to-end communications, multi-layered authentication systems, tamper-resistant transaction validation. Okay, security for what is stablecoins. Okay, so you have a focus on the crypto market. Would it be helpful? Yes. If they could do their job very well, it's helpful. They got 27 employees. So there's a couple, I guess, breaches they have here or problems they're going to have. 27 employees, all right. They don't have the capacity, I don't think, to realistically be able to service a large customer, right? So they can work on quantum security. They can work on quantum security, but with 27 employees, they don't have the capacity to be able to take on a big client, or they don't have the capacity to work with multiple clients with 27 employees. And so doing quantum computing is huge, but understanding quantum computing and doing the cybersecurity is a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother animal. And so it's very unlikely that you hire someone and they understand how to do things immediately. It's going to require like a super smart team, and 27 employees is not very much to be able to scale large. Okay, so currently, if we're looking at their growth, BTQ, okay, you can look at their company's market cap here. See where their market cap is. Looks like their market cap's at 875 million. Does that sound right? Let's see if that's correct. Their market cap's at 1.3 billion. 1.3 billion, and they have 27 employees. And we're talking about a market that even the companies that need quantum support aren't making money. They're losing money. So, it's like you have, let's say, this is almost a bad example, so I don't want to use this example. I don't want to use the example of NFTs because quantum is much more strong. But it's like gold mine, okay, gold mining. You got the gold miners, and you have a revolutionary new technology for gold mining. Okay, that's like the Rigettis, that's the IonQs. Okay, and then you have a company BTQ that says we have the storage holders for all of the gold that you're about to mine. So you're gonna have a quantum computer, assuming that it's effective. We're gonna have the ability for you to protect or have security against other quantum computers, assuming that it becomes effective. Now, right now, quantum computing, if it was more effective, you'd see more revenue, right? It still hasn't fully commercialized. And so imagine that gold mine. They're saying, we have this storage solution for you to hold all your gold. And the company is like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, it sounds really great, but like we're mining right now and we haven't even struck gold yet. Okay. So that's just something to consider. Like when you're looking at this company, it's like the next evolution of like post-quantum, meaning after quantum is, developed and being used very considerably, that they are able to have the security for it. Now, there's a tremendous amount of money putting into quantum computing. The companies are working on it almost every day. They're starting to develop algorithms. We're seeing error correction. So assuming that quantum does continue to become a solid technology, this makes sense. But it's almost like another higher level of risk compared to buying quantum companies, because it's like you're buying into the company selling the storage of the protecting of the gold when the company that's mining the gold hasn't really struck gold yet. They're just kind of mining. Does that make sense? It's like, do you want to invest in them? And I would be like, you take a lot of growth and you're probably going to make a lot of money if you get in way early, right? So it's like very long term, probably high growth potential, but very high risk. But it's also one of those positions where it's like, do you want to wait until you know that the quantum computers are becoming highly effective in generating revenue, so that this type of solution is very much required, and they're definitely going to see a huge market increase in their profits and what they make, because right now they, as we mentioned, they are not making money. And so I'm surprised they have 27 employees. I'm surprised that they have 27 employees. That's what it looks like, because that seems like a very small amount of employees, especially if their operating expense is $2 million a quarter. Okay, so they're spending a little bit under $100,000 per employee probably, but that's just employees. That's not including other things. They're probably spending a lot less than that, but that does kind of line up given their operating expenses. They have between 20 to 30 employees along with their other expenses. So it's very high risk. I'd say one of the biggest red flags I would say with BTQ is like just the number of employees. Of course, you can look at the company, go to their site, and you would look for, where they're hiring, careers, okay, open roles, cryptographers, embedded software engineer, senior backend engineer, Rust engineer. So that's going to be for the Solana. Solana runs on Rust. So, there's another, like, not only is it hard to have people that work on quantum, but now you're also going to need people that know the native languages of the cryptocurrencies that they are servicing, like Solana, for example. Okay. Hardware, digital design engineers, firmware, algorithm development engineers, all that. So it seems like they're hiring the right people as far as the different ads they have out. Okay. You got to wonder if they're going to be able to, pull it off with their current team, given where they're at. So that's kind of where we see. So that's BTQ. So BTQ, very high risk, just IPO'd. Long-term play, potentially nice, but very high risk. Short-term play, you'd want to have a plan as well. Nearest support levels around $9 or $8.50 a share, looking to recover back up into about $12 a share if they're bullish. All right, so we're talking about this type of trend here, kind of continuing, if that's what we could identify from IPO. Again, very, very new company, looking for something like this, 15 to 40% increase there. Now, when it comes to the next company, it's going to be IonQ. So IonQ is going to knock the socks off of a lot of investors because they are, just look at their progression. I mean, we started covering them around $6 a share. They're up to $84 a share and then pulled back down. They have a very consistent uptrend here, and they're continuing to just rise. We've had some amazing amounts of we had a lot of analysis going on with IonQ for sure. And as we're following IonQ, just keep in mind, when we're looking at these levels, very similar to the rest of quantum, the very conservative approach would be they continue to sell back down in that $50 range from 62, right? Something like this, and continue their trend. That's a very conservative play. And we can see that. Okay. Longer term, and why are they trading so much higher, and why are they potentially targeting $85 a share right now? It's got to be because of the marketplace demand. They actually have a little more demand, a little bit more capital coming in. So they do the trapped ion technology, and they already have a lot more customers. So they got Air Force, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Airbus, Hyundai, Oak Ridge. They have a better business development team. They're with GE. They're working with DARPA. NVIDIA is a partner. Lockheed Martin. Google is a partner. Dell is a partner. Toyota and Q Control and many others. And so they are releasing these quantum computers, and they're building a quantum network. So they're kind of putting these quantum computers in different spots around the US and in the world. And they've had a new article that came out about 7 days ago here that they demonstrated 99.99% 2-qubit gate performance, setting a new quantum computing record. All right. So if you go over to Rigetti, they have a Fidelity right now on their quantum computers. Okay, what did they say? They had a fidelity of 98.6%. Okay. IonQ, with their trapped ion technology, has come in with 99.9% 2-qubit gate performance. So that's going to allow them to scale. You can see performance of quantum computers today is limited by the error rates of 2-qubit gates, called the 2-qubit gate fidelity. This single number largely defines quantum computing performance, measuring the accuracy of quantum operations. As fidelity improves, fewer errors must be addressed and more complex algorithms can be run. So in a landmark technical result, IonQ has achieved the world's highest 2-qubit gate performance with fidelity exceeding 99.9%. So the first and only quantum computing company to cross this 4 nines benchmark. Now, why is this important? Error-corrected performance improves dramatically. This allows them to scale. Okay, complex breakthrough use cases can be addressed. So high-performing qubits enable complex algorithms. Products can be delivered faster. So fewer physical qubits are needed to build the large-scale fault-tolerant quantum systems. And IonQ's time to market also decreases for fewer errors per operation. Okay, so this performance result was achieved using prototypes, which will form the basis for its 256 qubit system that will be demonstrated in 2026. Mind you, it's a different tech, but Rigetti is looking to scale up to 100 qubits right now. IonQ's at 256. So when you're looking at this, reaching 4 nines fidelity is a watershed moment for IonQ's quantum leadership. And this exceeding of a 99% threshold on chips built in standard semiconductor fabs, we're now on the clear path towards millions of qubits while unlocking powerful new commercial applications sooner. Okay, so with a 20 times speed up in quantum accelerated drug development, in June this year, and up to a 12% performance improvement compared to classical computing and computer-aided engineering unveiled in March. They've also announced development in quantum applications such as object detection, autonomous vehicles, and artificial intelligence. I saw some of that object detection at CES. They were doing something with the some quantum sensors. And so when it comes to IonQ's financials, this is where it kind of gets interesting because they're at $21 billion market cap. They have more revenue than most other quantum companies, up to $20 million in the last quarter. And they've had a lot of US government interest, and their revenue is up 81% year over year. So they're seeing revenues actually jump already. Net income is still down big time, and their total assets are at 1.3 billion. So IonQ has the strongest, maybe not the longest, but founded in 2015. If you look at it compared to Dwave, which has been around much longer, I'd say IonQ, for how long they've been around, very, very strong base right now. And so you can see some of their technology. You can see how they're working with atoms at its core. Quantum computing is a machine that uses a quantum system like a spin of an electron to do a very specific type of math. Okay, they kind of break down the atom, nature's qubits, all right, and how they're using it. All right, so this is a really cool article. Trapping an ion. They talk about trapping an ion. Trap features around 100 tiny electrodes precisely designed, lithographed, and controlled to produce electromagnetic forces that hold our ions in place, isolated from the environment to minimize environmental noise and decoherence. And so they have physics around this that they're implementing, and I've seen some of the crazy stuff at a recent conference I went to in Albuquerque where they were doing this, and it was pretty tremendous. 1 qubit or 1/100. We don't stop at an ion. That wouldn't make it very useful. We can add, or we can and do load any number of ions into a linear chain. All right, so they're adding ions, and to date they've run a single qubit gate on a 79 ion chain and complex algorithms on chains of up to 35 ions. So they're using architecture that has connectivity for using ions to compute. Now this is where this has two major steps, right? Cooling, which reduces the computational noise and makes our ions better qubits, followed by state preparation, which initializes each ion into a well-defined zero state, ready to perform algorithms. So they have Doppler cooling, okay, and then they have computing with atoms, and they talk about this, how they manipulate the qubit state, first encoding and then operating on the information that we want to calculate. So to perform these gates, we use an array of individual laser beams, each imaged onto an individual ion, plus one global beam. The inference or interference between the two beams produces a beat note that at exactly the necessary energy to kick the qubits into a different state, creating entanglements. It's a whole nother process. Reading the answer, and reading the answer comes down to, once the computation has been performed, it's the reading the answer is done by shining a resonant laser on all of them at the same time. Process collapse any complex quantum information we've created and forces each qubit into one of two states. So they collect and measure the light and allows us to simultaneously read and collapse state of every ion. One of the states glows in response to the laser lights and the other does not. So we interpret this as a binary string, which each glowing atom is as 1 and each dark atom is 0. Okay, so down to a level here of binary string. And this is really important because that's the whole ones and zeros setup. That's the whole string of actually going from the ions and processing them into actually having answers. And so they have some other things. So isolating the ions, we can go into. It's a really great setup for IonQ, how they kind of explained it. But ultimately, financials, they have the cash, but they're still bleeding on revenue. They have the government support with a $2.7 billion quantum initiative likely to pass soon, and their name is on it. They're one of the top companies considered in this. You can see IonQ there. And so that's a bill that they're looking to pass that would give them more funding. And so as we look at their current chart, long term, they're probably looking, again, good in the long term. Near term, there is risk, seeing potential sell downs past the previous resistance at around 50. Okay, so that's where you'd want to watch. Key support around $50 a share, conservative down to 45. But the bullish uptrend, if they continue, they're looking for that swing back up in that $80 range. We might see something similar in correction, kind of a continuation back down into these levels around $47 or $50. I think that would make a lot of sense. But again, long term, looking really good for the company as they can impact AI heavily. So there you have it. The quantum companies that have a tremendous impact right now in the markets might not be, the biggest companies. You do have Google, which is a massive company. They're in quantum. You got Microsoft, they're in quantum. IBM, they're in quantum. These are the individual sole focused quantum companies that we're going over here. And there's another one, they're LAES. They're kind of in a similar position as BTQ, as we mentioned, anticipating the security with not really much revenues, but anticipating that quantum will need security, and they're in the cybersecurity space related to quantum. And so we'll be watching all the markets. We're going to actually probably have to separate quantum security from quantum hardware and quantum AI, as there's different types of quantum. But if you want to know quantum in general, learn how to invest in these companies in quantum, you want to know what goes into the research and get access to our daily live trading sessions. So we like to trade data center stocks. And today we were trading the stock BITF. All right, it's a data center company. But if you want to learn how to invest in space tech, robotics, all that stuff, it's in StockMate. We go live there every single morning, Monday through Friday. It's a separate setup from here on YouTube if you'd like to join us there. We got targets for the week, all the different companies reporting earnings, where they're projected to go, and then you get a community of like-minded investors. There's millionaires in here. We got over 24 millionaires, approaching 36 millionaires inside of StockMate, so you can always network with them as you see them talking about some companies right now. It's very interesting stuff. And if you're a beginner, it's a great place to be. If you're experienced, there's experienced investors. And if you want to talk to me too, you can always send me a message in StockMate. Again, daily live trading is happening tomorrow. You get a calendar. You can join us there tomorrow morning at market open. We're there every day, Monday through Friday. And I would love to see you there. Again, it's the second link in the description below. I appreciate you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If I earned your thumbs up, hit the like button. Do consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.